Chair, the government bench today believes that the EU can merge and to form a greater superstate for the greater benefit of the whole region. But if I move on to my extensions, I have three main rebuttals towards the opposition. First of all, he was saying that if we had a president, that he will represent his own class, his own culture, his own values. So let me question you this. Does Barack Obama actually represent Chicago only? Does Barack Obama actually represent only the African American? We don't think that's the case. But even if he wants to do so, even if the various extents he wants to do so, we say that there is a system of scrutiny. The scrutiny that is existing everywhere. For example, Ban Ki-moon doesn't necessarily represent Korea in the UN all the time. Because that system is there, and he knows it. At the very moment he sacrifices his role in order to protect only his people and not the general population, we believe that's the day he will not be re-elected, and we don't think he's going to sacrifice it. But on the second rebuttal here, we believe that cultures merge all the time. That is exactly why we see the Mexican region of Texas before becoming Texas United States today. That's exactly why in these cases cultures merge, and we put to you that in even more cases, if cultures don't merge, then we would have over 5,000 countries right now. Because I'm from Thailand. In Thailand we have many cultures. And we've merged Kingdom of the North, Kingdom of the South. These cases happen all the time. Because at the end of the day, when cultures see that have greater benefits in front of them, these things tend to merge. But even if that was the case, we still see that they can retain some of their cultural values in their own region, Mr. Chair. But furthermore, on the third rebuttal here, we put to you that economic differences can be made, can be done. Why? First of all, we've seen that in cases of Germany, East Germany and West Germany, significant economic differences. What happened? They merged because they believed in greater benefit. Furthermore, we put to you that sacrifices have been made by these nations. Germany, for example, they were willing to spend billions of euros on the bailout because we believed in a greater potential benefit. That is exactly why we believe that the will is there. But furthermore, we put to you that the European Union, since its very establishment, they have already sacrificed some of their sovereignty. So we still see that there's a political will for them in order to work for greater benefits. And this policy puts forward an even greater benefit for the whole region. So what do I bring to you today? 4 extensions, Mr. Chair. First of all, it leads to more participation within the general population. Second of all, how the benefits under one blanket law, or you can call it constitution, whatever. Third of all, there's a sense of belongingness and how it benefits a region. And fourth of all, it leads to more cooperation. Now to my first argument. More participation. The thing is this, the current status quo of the European Union, you have the EU High Council. What does it mean? It means that these councils are not really representing the people. Because, well, countries only send in their representative. The very moment that federal state is there, what does it mean? It means that to a certain extent, people will get the rights to elect who will be in that point, who will elect the representative of their country. We don't think that leaders of each country can entitle to send whoever they want. That very moment, these people will feel participated in that economy. And we think that's good. Why? Because right now, according to status quo, not necessarily that interests of the people are being represented within the EU. We believe that people cannot voice out their concerns. We believe that these policies are not catered to every region specifically. We believe that if these people are entitled to their vote to who will be in this EU Council or Parliament, or a new Parliament, whatever you're going to call it, we believe that this is something good, will represent the interests and the local interests of the region as a whole. But furthermore, on the second level, on the second argument, we believe that there are benefits, greater benefits under one blanket law or constitution, whatever we're going to say, like the United States of America. Thing is this, we believe that the reason of Greece's failure is not necessarily that, well, it's because of the EU, but it's because of that the laws that they have made, the policies that they enacted are somewhat against the will of the EU as a whole. This is exactly why one blanket law comes in. It's because one blanket law, say the United States of America, right? This constitution actually provides somewhat of a criteria for every state to enact a law that does not harm the region as a whole. And do you think that this is a good thing? Because for the very moment you're trying to enact a policy, you will consider the benefits of the region as a whole, and not only as yourself. And we think this actually we believe that this empowers the region as a whole. Is something we actually very want. But furthermore, on the second level of this argument, we believe this leads to even better human rights promotion. Why? Because according to the current status quo, every country that has to be in the EU have to pass Copenhagen criteria, right? That supports human rights and all that. But we put to you that this criteria is not exactly working very well. Because at the end of the day, when you gain acceptance, there is no check and balance that is there. We believe that in order to promote this even more, we need constant check and balance, which should only work within the EU superstate like the United States of America. Because authorities of these authorities of these entities can only be accepted in cases where there is a superstate, right? For example, Interpol does not necessarily have the authority in each sovereign nation as the FBI has in the United States of America. People don't accept that kind of authority unless it's in their state. And we believe, we put to you, that this will work under our paradigm. On the third argument, we put to you that there's a sense of belongingness. Why? Because participation, as I put to you in the first argument, leads to somewhat self-identification. We want these people to identify themselves not as only Germans, not only as French, but also as Europeans. Why? Because when the very moment, oh yes, before time's up, please.
Yes, why do you need to have, to be merged together while they have their own culture and it's up to them whether or not they want to be respected in their way or whatever?
Sorry, sir. I'm a Thai Buddhist. There's a Thai Muslim, and we both have cultures. We don't necessarily have to turn Muslim or turn Buddhist in order to become Thai. We have cultures in one super state of different cultures, and exactly fine that we work for political integration, Mr. Chair. Okay, anyways, sense of belongingness. We believe that integration is always better, right? First of all, it leads to even, what is actually POI? It leads to even more integration and more acceptance of races, right? For example, Spanish were not exactly accepted in the United States of America 150 years ago until the integration of Texas. The thing is this, the very moment when you mingle around these people, when you feel the surrounding around these people, is the very moment that you realize that they're one of your kind. This is exactly what we want to see. We don't want to see Greek people identifying other people as gypsies, Jews. We don't want that. This is something we will see under one paradigm super state. At the end of the day, in the long run, we want to see these people identifying themselves as Europeans, not of only one particular race. You can identify yourself as, I'm from Bangkok, I'm from Chiang Mai, or I'm from Kuala Lumpur, but not only as that. We want them to also realize that they're also Europeans because better benefit to be achieved. But furthermore, in the fourth extension, we put to you that we make way for more cooperation. Why? First of all, we can probably concede to a certain extent that the US is better off than the EU right now in terms of corporations. We don't see the US central government having to go bail out New York or Missouri, right? Because the thing is this, when at the very moment you try to integrate these regions, policies will be enacted under the same blanket law without harming the region as a whole. But furthermore, on the second level, put to you that conflicts are less likely to happen because you have vested interest within those regions. The conflicts of Greece would not have happened in the first place if there was a one blanket policy law. With these reasons, Mr. Chair, we put to you that the sense of belongingness there, we increase participation of people, we increase benefits under one blanket law, and we have more cooperation. With these extremely powerful proposal. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speakers, we do believe in the fact that the European Union has already become one of the major power of economy in this world today, right, Mr. Speaker? Because as we see, how European Union already contribute so much towards the developing of the economy of ours today, Mr. Speakers. But we do believe that we do not agree towards an extent that all of those European Union countries want to unite each other and create a super state country, Mr. Speakers. Because you must concede towards the fact that lots of internal problem, there's a lot of internal problem exists in every different single country that exists in the Europe right now, Mr. Speakers. Take example of Eurozone, Mr. Speakers. We do believe that Eurozone, when these countries are agree to sign an agreement to forming as a Eurozone, Mr. Speakers. First of all, we do concede towards the fact that they have every single different law, Mr. Speakers. For example, like Greece will have different laws comparing with Germany, Mr. Speakers. And we still see a lot of problems coming to those countries, Mr. Speakers. Furthermore, we say, when actually you forming a united country, Mr. Speakers, but at least one country is having a problem, Mr. Speakers, we do believe that it will affect each other like what happened in Eurozone right now, Mr. Speakers. We proudly say that one Eurozone is already enough, and we don't want to have another Eurozone in the status quo right now, Mr. Speakers. Certain things that opening government never proved to us, Mr. Speakers. Opening government never proved to us how directly by forming super states country can create a check and balance, Mr. Speakers, which I will explain more in my arguments why it won't happen the check and balance itself by actually forming these federal states, super states of countries, Mr. Speakers. In my extensions, I will talk to you about three basic ideas, Mr. Speakers. First, I will talk to you about how the fee of the political sector itself. Second, I will talk to you how about the complicatedness system of the government where you actually create a new country, Mr. Speakers. But last but not least, I will talk to you how about it will worsen the international relations, especially when the feeling that you have more power to actually become a superpower country. But before I move on, let's deal with several rebuttals, Mr. Speakers. First, they keep talking about how United States also can become success to actually become a super states country, Mr. Speakers. First, we say United States is totally different compared with Europe, Mr. Speakers. Because we do believe that United States, at the very start of the beginning, Mr. Speakers, when there's still the inflation era, for example, Mr. Speakers, United States, they already unite to each other, Mr. Speakers. And so since the very early year of the inflation year, Mr. Speakers, we do believe that their value and culture and their identities are already being formed during those inflation area, Mr. Speakers. That's why they already formed into United States country, Mr. Speakers. But let us compare with Europe, Mr. Speakers. We do believe most of the European country is the one who invade another country, Mr. Speakers. For example, like Holland invade Indonesia, Mr. Speakers. Which is showing how Europeans exist with a lot of countries, showing how they already stand on their own value at the very beginning of the country forming itself, Mr. Speakers. And we say it's not good after actually forming a new country of the Euro, Mr. Speakers. Second, talking about the idea of opposing government idea about talking about the value of participation, Mr. Speakers. How these participations will affect the elections of the president, Mr. Speakers. We do believe that when it caters towards the context of catering every single needs of the society, Mr. Speakers, it is very various that every single society have their own demands, like Mr. Speakers. For example, the demand for France, they need a lot of employment. Or for example, take the demand of United Kingdom, for example, they'll have their own different demands, Mr. Speakers. We do believe that the sense of belonging of the society will never be there, Mr. Speakers, as the sense of being a priority is never be there, because this country is catering towards much of the society itself, and we say it's bad, Mr. Speakers. Before let's go to my first idea, sit down, talking about the political, Mr. Speakers. We do believe that at the very first place, like, every single country that exists in the European Union itself share the different value of political, Mr. Speakers. They have their own system at the very first place, Mr. Speakers. And also we do believe that there's a lot of culture diversity that exists in every single country, Mr. Speakers. Take an example of austerity measure, Mr. Speakers. We do believe austerity measure of Portugal, Spain, and also Greece is different with each other, Mr. Speakers. And they have their own way to actually solve their problem, Mr. Speakers. Another example of Spain, Mr. Speakers. When in Spain, there are certain race of Catalan and Basque where they're trying to fight in order to create one country inside of Spain itself, Mr. Speakers. Like trying to separate a new country inside of Spain, Mr. Speakers. We never see by actually forming those federal states, these federal states can actually cater to every single needs of every single country, Mr. Speakers. Furthermore, we say when it comes towards the context of differentiation, Mr. Speakers, we do believe that every single country always want to protect their own sovereignty at the very first place, Mr. Speakers. And we do believe that we must honor that sovereignty at the very first place, Mr. Speakers. They're actually trying to protect their own identities of becoming a society of a nation, Mr. Speakers, as a different country compared to other, and we must honor that, and we must not unite those countries, Mr. Speaker. Second idea, talking about the complicatedness of the government system itself, Mr. Speakers. We know that UK is still believe in the monarchy value, Mr. Speaker, and also France is still, for example, France is still believe in the value of presidential, for example, Mr. Speakers. And we see a lot of problems coming with those areas, Mr. Speakers. For example, like in France, the parties of Sarkozy and also Hollande is fighting with each other, Mr. Speakers. Take an example of the previous year, German, Mr. Speakers. Berlin Wall exists with East and West Germany, Mr. Speakers. Even though those countries already merged, Mr. Speaker, we say that the process of merging of those countries has cost a lot of lives, Mr. Speakers. A lot of people already died to actually protect, to actually unite Germany, Mr. Speakers. When actually coming to the context of uniting a new country, Mr. Speakers, we do believe that each every country of being exists in the European Union will fight for their powers to have actually the full control of their country, Mr. Speakers. And why so it's bad, Mr. Speakers? Because this country will always dealing with the internal problems and also neglecting the fact that they need to cater of the society needs, Mr. Speakers, which is the responsibility of the country. And we say when they're actually dealing too much with these internal problems, the problems to actually take care of the society is being neglected, Mr. Speaker. Last but not least, the idea of international relations, Mr. Speakers. We do believe when the idea of European Union become the super states, Mr. Speakers, it means like we have 4 superpowers countries, Mr. Speakers. China, USA, Russia, and also this European new country, Mr. Speakers. We see a lot of problems coming with the USA and China, Mr. Speakers. Take an example of clashing between USA and China about Cheng problem, Mr. Speakers. And we see how China, when they already become superpower country, they have their own ego, Mr. Speakers. See those South China Sea disputes, Mr. Speakers. We do believe that when there's a lot of existence of a lot of new superpower countries, Mr. Speakers. First, we do believe that there's shared share different value, which will always clashing between each other, Mr. Speakers. Furthermore, they will have their own ego by actually already considering that they are very strong and they will not listen to each other, Mr. Speakers. And we do believe that it will create more chaos exist in our today's world, Mr. Speakers. So, why the debate should be taken by the closing opposition, Mr. Speakers? Because closing of the opposition already managed to prove you how the society needs will not be catered by actually creating the super states countries. As a society, we lose the feeling of becoming a priority inside of the country. We are more than one to oppose.